Praise God. Uh, After we left our band and didn't have a job, then all of a sudden our money ran out. And so I remember being at the house, and all of our friends thought that Raymond and Claiborne really went off on the deep end. There was big talk around town. People saying, well, if you want some furniture, go over to their house and get rid of all the furniture, and all the band people we knew would come over and get stuff. And but it was a bad, great time for us. There had been something that happened to me and Claiborne. I was dating a Catholic girl, so back years before all this happened, I went to see a movie, and the name of the movie was Brother, Sun, Sister, Moon. And the movie was actually about St. Francis of Assisi. And so Claiborne also went to see that movie, and I didn't know that for years. But when I went to see the movie, I saw something in there. I saw this guy became a Christian, and he just really sold his life out to God, and then he was mistreated by the church, and God had spoken to him to rebuild the church that's been torn down. And so that was the mission that St. Francis really had from God. And so he also made a girl like a sister. And I left out of there. I told my girlfriend, I said, that's crazy. I said, there's nobody could give up that. You can't give up that kind of a life. And I didn't believe that was a possibility to even think about, that a guy would be pure, keeps himself pure from fornication and things. So the same thing that I thought was impossible, when we came to God, God started to saying things to me not to get married. So I waited for over 17 years before I ever got married, and Claiborne also. We gave ourselves totally to serving the Lord. And those weren't easy years, but they were years of growing close to God. And we were often, as Apostle Paul said, often in prayer and fasting. And during the time that we were there at the house, that I looked around one night and I saw everything in the house was gone except for the old piano. I had an old piano in there. And I wrote a song, me and Claiborne wrote, This Is My Prayer. And the prayer was my brother, my sister, my mother, my dad would all be saved. And that was our prayer, was that our family would be saved. So me and Claiborne ended up not being able to pay the rent there, so we kept one van, and that van had a little sleeping place in it, so we could sleep in that little Volkswagen van. And so we'd go to a motel, not motels, but truck stops, and take kind of bathe off there and stuff. And so my mother, my dad, and everybody heard about me and Claiborne being homeless. We didn't think of it being like homeless, but it was happy. And so we would, God was taking care of us all the way. And we started going to church out there with Brother Morgan, and David started, that's why we was going, because David was visiting there, and we thought David would maybe become saved or something, and we kept trying to encourage him there. So was my mom and dad and all of them had a meeting with David, and my sister Dorothy was there, and all of them had the little meeting. And my sister was crying, and my mother's crying, saying, Raymond and Claiborne's gone crazy. They sleeping in a Volkswagen van and don't have no house, no place to live. And David said all of a sudden he just became very nauseated, and he said he went into the bathroom and sit on the floor. He said, I just started sitting on the floor just because it just made me sick to hear what all they were saying. And he said, all of a sudden I understood exactly what was going on. And it's very important what God revealed to David. It was very incredible. David came back into the room, and David said, they're not crazy. He said, they're trying to follow the word just like it's written. And that's exactly the interpretation was exactly right for us, because every word that proceeded out of Jesus' mouth we cherished. We saw him talk about the least in the kingdom would be the greatest. And we strived with all of our heart to become the least among people, not the greatest, but the least. And was always giving things away and loving people, not to say credit for ourselves, but credit to the Lord, because it's His life that lives through us. When we become so much like Him, that's when we know we're refined and we're more like Jesus, because He was a perfect image of God. Who God was is, you see Jesus, you've seen the Father, because that's the Father's heart. He loved people. And so as the Lord led us, was in that direction. And so I had a dream one time, and the dream was this, that I saw David, and a voice was talking to him and telling him and giving him instructions. And so David went in this water, and there was a big round thing that looks like something in a clock. It's got all these little notches in it, but it was huge. And the voice said, push it out, push it out. So David was pushing it and kept pushing it, and the voice kept saying, push it out, push it out. So it's David coming out of the world. It's coming out of the world is what I was seeing. And he pushed this out, and he kept pushing it and pushed it. And finally, there was another part just like it. And when he pushed it together, this great machinery came together, and all of a sudden I was on top of a mountain, and I saw these great arms come out of this machine, and it was reaching and gathering all kind of trees and pulling and harvest, and a great harvest was coming. And I knew what it represented. David was a missing link to come together with us to bring together a great revival. So it was after that one night David, my brother, had been seeking the Lord. He'd come to the altar and pray a little while and get up and walk back out of the church. And one night he came there and was having a revival, and David prayed just a few minutes and he got back up. He had a song on the radio, Sweet Margarine, and it was doing real big in the nation. And so he was turning around. He turned around and looked at me. He looked right at me in the eyes, and I was crying. He said, Raven, what's wrong? I said, David, tonight was your last night. And he looked at me, and he just kind of walked on off. And then the evangelist that was there, Brother Richard Hurd, great man of God, walked up to me and said, this was David's last night. He said, this was it. And so David walked out of there, and so we all got in the car together. And so I told David about a man that me and Claver had met, W.B. Wyndham, a great man of God that had cancer. And of all places, we live on Hoy Road. Mostly all blacks live on this road, which I'm not prejudiced. I'm just, but it's where we lived at. Brother Tim's and all our black brothers and sisters on that road. I love them. And so I told David, I said, I want you to hear this man's testimony. I said, he moved across the road from the studio, just down there, just on Hoy Road. And David said, well, I can maybe stop a few minutes. I got to pay the guys in the band. So we stopped by there, and David heard Brother Wyndham's testimony. It was incredible, the testimony that Brother Wyndham had, and the compassion and the love that he had. And he told his testimony, and David said, Brother Wyndham, I appreciate that testimony. He said, but I got to go run and pay the guy in the band. And David opened up the door and was headed out the door, and Brother Wyndham made one statement, that incredible statement to David. He said, David, do you want to be saved or not? And David just stood there. He just, to respond to that, he just kept thinking. And you could tell 1,000 things are going through his mind. And all of a sudden, David closed that door, and he said, I do want to be saved. He said, come over here and give your life to the Lord. And when David did that, I knew it was no fake. It wasn't just something to shake somebody's hand and say, I'm going to do it someday. It was, I'm committed. I'm committed. And he called the record company and told them he's not going to sing no more things for them, but for the Lord. So God's purpose is always at hand.
Well, God's been good to us, and thank God that David gave his life to the Lord. And you know, it wasn't an easy thing for him either. He had to give those guys, they had a real good band, they had to give it up. And we went down there the last night that he performed. And he said that we really were obeying the Lord that came that night, because he really needed the support. You know, sometimes we make decisions of if we really gonna serve God or not. And when you come to that place of real surrender, real surrender, that you're ready to give up everything, the enemy will fight you and will try to get you to stay where you're at. But thank God we made choices and we made the right choice to serve God. And as we were at the church there, David started coming to the church there, and we left the Black brothers and stayed over there with my brothers to support him. And then the pastor said that years ago that this man came to that church and prophesied that there would be a group that would come there, and that they would be an outreach group, and they would go all over the world reaching the lost. And the pastor said that he always thought that it was going to be a country band because that's what he liked. But it was, to his surprise, it would be a group that would be way out there, that God was going to get a hold of, that we didn't choose God. God chose us. It was his choosing. We didn't just say one day, I think we're going to change our style of music and we're going to start playing Christian music. It wasn't like that at all. It wasn't our choice. We didn't desire to serve God until God woke us up and let us understand that he is real. He's not the God of the past, which he is the God of the past and the God of the future. But you can't never forget he's the God of now. He's the great I am.